ad on your program, and so therefore you're not going to be critical of a war the way it might be in the mainstream news. But it might be that you know that your audience has an appetite for certain, salacious content or a certain kind of politics that you may or may not share, and there can be a kind of audience captures in that way. So there's risks to any media enterprise. What I think grounds news, what grounds real report, good content is real reporting. So that's why I would say
just a sneak peek of the latest from the Hill you caught there. And don't worry, we'll roll the full clip before wrapping up this video, so stay with us. You're going to want to see the whole thing. But before that, let's dive into the heart of today's topic. Russell Brand opening up to Tucker Carlson about indie media and the real threat it poses to the elites, and the intense efforts they made to take him down. Remember to smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dive discussions and top-notch commentary just like this. Ready? Let's get started. The mainstream media landscape is fraught with challenges and tensions as it caters to audience demands that sometimes veer towards the sensational rather than the substantial. The pursuit of salacious content over sober, fact-based reporting can lead to a type of audience capture where media outlets begin to reflect not the objective truth, but the biases and appetites of their viewership. This does a disservice to the very essence of journalism and undermines the public's trust in media institutions. However, amidst this troubling trend, there are beacons of journalistic integrity that stand out, emphasizing the critical role of real reporting in sustaining a healthy democracy. Journalists like David Sirota and the team at The Liver exemplify what it means to commit to investigative journalism, to go beyond the surface fluff and bring forth the hard-hitting truths that may otherwise remain buried. Instead of relying on a singular source, as commendable as the Twitter files released are thanks to the diligent efforts of Matt Taibbi, Sirota's model involves active, on-the-ground reporting. It's a laborious and costly endeavor, yet invaluable. The scoops obtained by The Liver are often so impactful they are rehashed by mainstream outlets that decline to do the legwork themselves. Similarly, Max Blumenthal and the team at the Grayzone have showcased the power independent journalism wields when reporters have the courage and support to question the narratives woven by legacy publications. Through their meticulous work, they've prompted established entities like the Intercept to reassess stories and even led the New York Times to reevaluate their own reporting. It's a stark reminder of the influence that rigorous investigative work can have, potentially prompting a renaissance of fact-first journalism across the board. Crucially, the core of the issue is freedom of the press in its truest form, allowing journalists to unearth and report facts without being confined by corporate interests, government pressures, or audience biases. It underscores a responsibility among not just independent journalists, but all media practitioners to pursue authenticity and truth over convenience and complacency. At a time when former press secretaries and political figures so often transition into prominent media roles, the ethical lines blur. Yet, it's not inherent in the role, but rather in the execution. For journalism isn't about who tells the story, but how and why it's told. The sustainability of our democratic society depends on a vigilant, fearless press that prioritizes fact over fiction and truth over trend.
Ad on your program, and so therefore you're not going to be critical of a war the way it might be in the mainstream news. But it might be that you know that your audience has an appetite for certain, salacious content or a certain kind of politics that you may or may not share, and there can be a kind of audience captures in that way. So there's risks to any media enterprise. What I think grounds news, what grounds real report, good content is real reporting. So that's why I would say, in particular, people like David Sirota and what he's been doing with The Lever are incredible, because to do actual reporting, and I appreciate the Twitter files and what Matt Taibbi has done there, but that is still a kind of a bunch of documents that have been you were granted access to because of respect that Elon Musk had for him as a journalist, which was well earned, and a kind of limited pool of documents and resources that came from one big disclosure. It takes an enormous amount of resources to be able to come up with scoops outside of the context of an individual relationship, and to have a diversity of news stories that you cover the way that someone like Sirota has tried to set up at Elever, hiring staff members that can actually travel across the country and do follow-up reporting. The exposés he's been doing on Boeing. He regularly gets these scoops, his organization regularly gets these scoops that are just parroted and regurgitated out by the mainstream media. We had Max Blumenthal on yesterday talking about the work that he's been doing at Grayzone and that the Electric Infitata has been doing to try to dig into some of the reporting from the New York Times and other sources about the October 7th allegations of sexual assault. And only now, because of his reporting, have other more mainstream outlets, the Intercept has done coverage on that now, and internally at the New York Times, as we reported yesterday, apparently they have even pulled one of their podcast episodes because of the questions that have been raised by independent reporting there. So it really, to me, all comes down to whether or not independent journalists are given the freedom to get to the root of facts. That's what should be driving all of this news coverage. And too much of what we're learning about what's happening at the mainstream, it's not just that I think that people are meandering away from it because they are not interested in whatever news show is being hosted by whatever old press secretary from the Biden administration or the Bush administration that's propped up over there. I say that as a former press secretary myself. I feel like I can make that critique. Yeah. But because the journalism, the fundamental stories that they're covering and the facts they're deploying are so